Well, a warm welcome from Titanic Belfast, which is preparing to celebrate the life and times of one of the city's most famous sons, Rinty Monaghan. Well, a special talk is being held here tomorrow night about the life of the boxing hero, and it's being hosted by Barry Flynn, who joins me now. Barry, Rinty passed away in 1984, the year I was born, in fact, so perhaps people of my generation aren't overly familiar with his story.
Well, there's something for all generations in the story of Rinty Monaghan. He was a person who came from this city. He scaled the heights of world boxing, and he brought pride back to this city. But it's a story that will interest all generations, Paul. 1950s and 1940s, people who were born there and remember it, we'll ask them to come along tomorrow night and retell their memories. But for people, it's a story that, it's an enduring story. It's something that Belfast people will tell in 100 years' time, the tale of Rinty Monaghan and the greatness and his legend.
And his talents extended outside the ring as well, didn't they?
Yes, it was. He was a family man, he was an entertainer, he did a fantastic Popeye the Sailor Man. But he was a boxer above all else, but he was a man who lived a hard life in hard times, but he brought great pride to Belfast. He was supreme in the ring, and his story is really fantastic in the telling.
Well, also joining us is Rinty's nephew, Eamon Macaulay. Eamon, you have a very special belt in your hand there that was won by Rinty. It must be one of the more poignant memories you have of him.
Well, this was one of 6 belts that Rinty held. Rinty was Northern Ireland champion. He was also Irish champion, British champion, Empire champion, European champion and world champion. And this is a Ring Magazine championship belt that Nat Fletcher across the Atlantic to present Rinty with. Rinty has a distinction of being the only home-based, undisputed world champion ever to come out of Ireland. And it's an opportunity for people to come down tomorrow night, to come down and hold the belt and get their photograph taken with it.
A very special night for your family as well.
Very special and poignant night, and it's great to see him getting some recognition. It's wonderful.
Well, thank you both very much for joining me. This special talk is part of the Family and Friends Festival here at Titanic Belfast, and it gets underway at 7:30 tomorrow night in the Andrews Gallery. Now it's back to the studio.
We are at the Titanic Quarter here, and it's the Rinty Monaghan night, and we're hoping for a big crowd. And there it is there, the Rinty Monaghan Docklands hero. Boxing historian and author Barry Flynn discusses the remarkable career of Rinty Monaghan, who won the world flyweight title in 1947. And there's a former British champion, David Armour there, cut to pieces. He's just had a bad shave. And there's the programme for tonight. We've got them these wee flyers. So we're getting all set up. We're getting all set up here. Some footage of Rinty there. Just very early days. It's about 5 o'clock, and this is the format it's going to take. It's going to be very, very homely. And we're getting footage sort of Barry Flynn sorting out the footage. There's David Armour. So here's David evening. As I say, very, very early days, and we hope these chairs are all going to be filled. We've got the red carpet out tonight for the Monaghan family. VIPs, very good.
By a non-stop attack.
Just getting everything ready for kick-off in about another hour and a half.
Evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to Titanic Belfast. First question, who has been here before? Oh my goodness, I've got a lot of work to do on you lot tonight. My name is Claire Bradshaw. I'm Head of Sales and Marketing here at Titanic Belfast. What you're all part of, whether you know it or not, is the very first festival of family and friends at Titanic Belfast. We've had people from 148 countries across the world come into this building, but the hardest lot to convince is the people on our doorstep. You know what we're like in Northern Ireland. So tonight we're delighted that so many of you are here tonight for a very special reason and for a very special talk indeed. We're delighted that you could be part of it. And apart from enjoying this evening, which I have no doubt you will do, I really hope that you come back and you visit and you go through the galleries at Titanic Belfast. But we have lots of other events taking place over the next couple of days. You're in what is probably Northern Ireland's largest front parlour, or as my granny called it, the good room. What we've got tomorrow night is an Irish house party. We have traditional music, we have dancers, we have a bar. If anyone wants to come along for the crack, one of the prizes from our ballot tonight is a pair of tickets for that. On Saturday, we have an event which is actually a vintage cinema experience where we're showing the film A Night to Remember, which was the original Titanic movie before Hollywood got its hands on the story. So again, we have a pair of tickets for that to give away, and the last prize in our ballot is a pair of tickets for all the family to come along and visit Titanic Belfast whenever suits you. So without further ado, I'd like you to put your hands together please for your host, compere and all-around superstar for tonight, Mr. Barry Flynn.
Thank you very much, folks. What I usually say when we've so many good boxing folk gathered together, nobody ring a bell, or else we'll have all sorts of things breaking out the floor. I would be unfair to pick out anybody individually, but I'm just looking out among the crowd to see. We also have here the belt. Okay, you get your photograph taken with that there, it's unique. We've also got somebody unique like Eamon Macaulay here, who's a nephew. Eamon will be doing things like this. Just as I thought. Okay, that's like the first house I ever bought. Welcome. God bless you. I love boxing people. They turn up late. You know, I thought there's probably boxing people standing in the Odyssey waiting on Depeche Mode coming on. You know, they got that mixed up. But we're here tonight to celebrate. We're celebrating a man. And we're also celebrating an area of Belfast, now sadly part of the collective folklore. That's the Greater York Street, Dock, and Sailortown area. And I want to introduce John Campbell, the poet. John, stand up, please. One of our most fantastic poets who has told the tales of those individuals who have put Belfast working class people on the map. And John will be reading a couple of poems later on. But we're here to celebrate the characters, stories, the tales, the people, but most of all, Rinty Monaghan. Rinty is 30 years dead next March. That's a generation. People call that a generation, 30 years. And that's something that needs to be marked. And we're in an organisation called the Belfast Boxing Ring, and what we're trying to do, and we're almost there, is to erect a statue to Rinty where the new University of Ulster will go in York Street. We're there, almost, but you never know what could happen. It's been a long, hard process. There's also going to be a statue to a gentleman whose family are up here, Johnny Caldwell. Rest in peace. Give them a round of applause, please. But it's also hard to talk about Rinty. Rinty, 30 years dead. Rinty, did he ever get the recognition he deserved? He retired very young. He retired at the top of his trade. But then again, he blended into Belfast. Always a character. Always someone with his kind smile. Always someone who would do you a good turn. An entertainer. Always ever present. But it's Rinty Monaghan. That memory is going day by day, diminishing into the ether. And what we need to do is get the street characters of Belfast, people who put this city on the sporting map, we need them acknowledged, and we need this all done and remembered for future generations. And I also remember a poet by the name of A.E. Heisman. He wrote a poem, and it was called To an Athlete Dying Young. And I thought it was quite apt when you're thinking about Rinty Monaghan, thinking about Johnny Caldwell, thinking about John McNally, and now Carl Frampton, people who brought pride to the areas from which they came. And I'll just read you, and this is what I think is very poignant about these people who did so much for this city. And it reads, the time you won your town the race, we cheered you through the marketplace. Man and boy stood cheering by, and home we brought you, shoulder high. It goes on. Smart lad to ship the times away from fields where glory does not stay, and early though the laurel grows, it withers quicker than the rose. Now you will not swell the rout of lads who wore their honours out, boxers whom renown outran, and the name it died before the man. Rinty's dead 30 years. We need to keep his name alive. And hopefully this is part of that process tonight. You can feel his ghost. You can feel his ghost all over Belfast. You can feel his ghost here tonight. His family's here tonight. Tommy's here tonight. I was looking through the research. Rinty talked about his two brothers having to fight each other for the Ulster title. Tommy was one of those ones and Patsy was the other. And one couldn't afford to go to Dublin, or couldn't go to Dublin. But that was the boxing blood in the Monaghan family. I think it's Eamon O'Hara who nailed it down to say, 21st of August 1918 he was born. Jack Dempsey was world heavyweight champion. Belfast stood on the cusp of a horror of partition and the street violence that happened thereafter. It was a big family living in a kitchen house. Poverty, head to toe, toe to head in the beds. Bunk beds, you name it. It was a hard life. They moved to a slightly bigger house, I think it was Thomas Street. 2 rooms upstairs and one could take a bunk bed. Family had a lot of fun, Rinty Monaghan. Thomas and Martha, they sang to their kids. John Joseph Rinty Monaghan acquired his love of music. He also loved a wee dog, Alsatian dog called Rinty, who was a star, brought over by the American troops after the war, became a star in Hollywood, the Alsatian. So basically what happened is his granny used to call out Rinty, but she couldn't say it after a while and got mixed up and it became Rinty. So Rinty stuck as the nickname for John Joseph Rinty Monaghan. His father was an energetic man. He'd been in the war. He worked in the Navy. He came back and he taught his kids how to fight. Box, punch bag, skip, they all began boxing. And they also learned the thing when Irish eyes are smiling. So you've boxing and entertainment coming together, a potent mix, and you've also poverty. Hunger, Mal Copley said, was what gave us the great boxers in the 30s. And that's what it was. People who could fight for a shilling, a couple of shillings, could feed a family. Scarcity in the Depression. Boxing was a man's way of putting shoes sometimes on kids. Bit of pride back in the family. Rinty's family were just like that. His father was called Thomas, short for Ta, all the way around. And he was the 7th son, apparently, of the 7th son, which gives him healing qualities, so they say. Mentioned Tommy, he boxed there for an Ulster title. They were all boxers. And at the age of 14, we record that Rinty had his first paid fight. Young Sam Ramsey. 14 years of age, folks. What society would allow that now? It wouldn't. But that's the way Belfast was. That was working class culture. That was life. We kitchen parlour houses. People fighting, people boxing. They enjoyed it. Sometimes they needed to do it. Rinty Monaghan came in the 1930s. It was years and times of radios and uncertainties, no jobs, people listening, reading papers, going to the gym and keeping fit. It was a hard life. Hard knocks and hard fights. I want to talk to you about the Chapel Fields, where a lot of Belfast boxers cut their teeth. Ma Copley, that was her name. She ran the Chapel Fields. She was from Yorkshire. She came over here, part of an amusement travelling family. And they opened the Chapel Fields, which was a tent in the winter, an open field in the summer, and it was facing St Malachy's Church, Alfred Street there. And there's now buildings. But this was the place where men came. They didn't need licenses, some of them, most of them. They tried their hand for a few shillings. If they won, fair enough. If they lost, they got a sore face. But hey, that's boxing. People will pit their wits and pit their fists against people in professional boxing if they can get something out of it. In the 30s, the fights took place outdoors in winter months. There was a marquee. Jimmy Warnock, the Shankill Road flyweight, despite twice defeating the reigning champion Benny Lynch from Glasgow, never got his world title. But by goodness was he a hero of the Chapel Fields. Were they going out of their way to see this gentleman? Buck Alec Robinson, he fought there too. And he says, listen, if I hit them, it's good night, nurse. Buck Alec said that. I wonder, was there ever a fighter called Buck Egypt? I'm sure there was. Ginger Leckie, Pat Kelly, Buckets McGahey. Buckets McGahey, apparently he used to work in the shipyard and carry, known as buckets because he used to carry buckets of bolts to people. Buckets McGahey. There was a player who played for Linfield in the 1980s called Martin McGahey, and he got the nickname Buckets. And nobody could work out why he was called Buckets McGahey until they realised that it was the older people at the Windsor Park crowd remembered Buckets McGahey. We also had a guy called Kid Derg. The footwork of a ballerina, but a stronger punch than Margot Fontaine. We also had, if we look back, Cecil Creighton. What a great name. He owned a pet shop in Smithfield, Cecil Creighton. He was a darling of the crowd. And when he used to come in to the ring in the Chapel Fields, the crowd used to go tweet, 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 tweet in honour of him and his little pet shop. He says he also had a trick of swallowing goldfish. And also beyond that, he ended up on his backside more times than enough. He was rubbish. He was known as the cauliflower bum in Belfast. Rinty, he made his start in the Chapel Fields. He boxed there 7 or 8 times during that period, 36-38. Young Kelly, Young Josephs, Teddy Meikle, Shankill Road, Joe Battling McCluskey, Cyclone Kelly, Ike Weir. They're all names out of one of these Jimmy Cagney movies you'd have seen in the 1930s or 40s. Black and white. Fantastic. Oh, it's an era of smoke-filled halls, of catcalls, of smart comments, of hard men and hard bouts. But what basically happened was that they clamped down on it, and Mac Copley was forced to go to the Ulster Hall, where they had to have rules and regulations, where the Chapel Fields did not. I know this is about Rinty, but we're talking about the heroes and the people of Sailortown, the Dock, York Street. And I want to mention one gentleman called John McGreevy. He was a dockside man, a working class hero, fought under the name of Jackie Quinn from Pilot Street. A man who was supreme in his craft, a man who epitomised the world of boxing in Sailortown, a man who garnered respect from all who knew him. And his story is epic in its telling. And I'd ask John Campbell to pay a short tribute to a man who fought under the name of Jackie Quinn. John.
This is one of the poems I've written about many of the boxers from York Street, Sailortown. Sadly, it was written for a magazine and I didn't get enough words to say all that I wanted to say. I had to stick it into a small space. And in my opinion, Jackie was one of the greatest fighters we had. I had the pleasure of knowing him. And I was asked by the magazine publisher if I would write this when Jackie died. And I was pleased to do it, but as I said, sadly, I would have loved to have written more. It's called The Hardest Game, and it's a tribute in verse to John McGreevy. Fighting under the name of Jackie Quinn, he became the Irish featherweight champion in 1929 and the Irish bantamweight champion in 1935. A native of Belfast, Sailortown, he was a credit to the game and a local hero to both sides of the Dockland community. It's called The Hardest Game. Born in Sailortown in 1910, he became the doyen of the dockside men when he took up boxing and changed his name to take his chances in the hardest game. He was Jackie Quinn when the gloves were laced and he asked no quarter from the men he faced. Fistic perfection was his sole aim. He was dedicated to the hardest game. This natural flyweight, with style and skill, boxed his way to the top of the bill, while opponents were rendered tame as he claimed the letter in the hardest game. Young and fearless, fit and trim, the Warnock brothers all fell to him. But defeat by Jackie brought no shame, for he was a master of the hardest game. An Irish champion when just 19 said Jimmy Warnock, he's the best I've seen. Not too many will douse his frame. He's all our daddies in the hardest game. The canny fighter with aggressive drive took the bantamweight title in 35, and when Musson punished his courageous frame, He refused to be halted in the hardest game. Admired and respected by all since then, revered by the cream of our fighting men, whatever religion, they'll say the same. He gave us all to the hardest game. When he finally fell, it was no disgrace, for he took on a champion we all must face. He battled well, but the last count came, and we lost a legend of the hardest game. Thank you.
They're wise words and they're from the heart. And I think everybody knows when John speaks and John writes, he's been there, seen it, done it, witnessed it. And I think John is a credit to this city. Anyway, back to Rinty Monaghan. Where were we? We're in the Chapel Fields. His career's on the up and up. Here's the other list of guys who fell to Rinty. Mick Gibbons twice, Frank Benson. Cross-channel boxers like Tommy Allen, Glasgow's Geordie Lyne, Liverpool's Paddy O'Toole. He described the contest against O'Toole as the miracle fight. He didn't even know he had got the decision until Frank McAlorum told him in the dressing room. Now that's dedication, that's the hardest game. Not knowing you're so exhausted whether you win or lose. Joe Kiley of Limerick, Alf Hughes of Hartlepool, Pat Murphy, Spider Allen, all fell. However, we come to a time in 1938, the Oval Football Ground, the 23rd of July. Jackie Patterson. Remember that name, folks. Jackie Patterson. Southpaw from Glasgow came over to fight in front of 6,000 people in front of the stand at the Oval. He was only 19. It should have been straightforward for Rinty. He smashed Rinty to the floor in the 5th round, and the 6,000 fans in the Oval gasped. Rinty Monaghan had been knocked down by a novice. An army of local supporters shell-shocked. It was a knockout. The gladiator had gone in and had been taken out. That was the setback of 1938 for Rinty Monaghan. Many people would have looked at him and says, "You've lost to a young novice. That's it. You know, you're too old for this game." So what happened after that was, he fought a guy called Joe Curran. And he also went to England, he fought Curran. Curran was up and coming, but Rinty proved himself against Curran. And people began to look again and say that was a blip against young Jackie Patterson at the Oval. 1938 campaign, he lost again to Tommy Stewart, a battler, Tommy Stewart. 1939, he went to Newcastle. This is a good one. He fought Curran again. He weighed in, great atmosphere about the town of Newcastle, but he was tired. So he says to Mr. McAlorum, "I think I'll go and see a film to calm myself before all this action tonight." So he took himself off to the pictures. Newcastle. Ben Crosby was in Paris honeymoon. He was enjoying it so much, time flew by. Mr. McAlorum and the people and the promoters were going nuts. Where's Rinty Monaghan? Where's Rinty Monaghan? There was about 6,000 or 7,000 people heading to the arena, and Rinty had become so engrossed in Ben Crosby that he forgot all about the fight.